Admiral Vashi pressed his scaled palm against the biometric scanner, watching the red light blink mockingly at him for the third time. Behind him, his so-called elite team shuffled nervously, their advanced stealth suits squeaking like rusty door hinges every time they moved. So much for silent infiltration. Foolproof security, he muttered under his breath, pulling out his plasma cutter. That's what the blueprint said. Foolproof. He began slicing through the scanner housing, sparks flying everywhere. Well, congratulations, Proxima Station. You've successfully proven that fools come in all shapes and sizes. The Galactic Heritage Museum stretched out before them like a monument to bureaucratic incompetence. Dim emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across displays of priceless artifacts that mostly looked like overpriced paperweights. But somewhere in this maze of cultural pretension sat the real prize, the blade of eternal conquest, locked away in Vault Omega 7 behind enough force fields to stop a supernova. Or so they claimed. Sir, whispered Morting, his communications specialist, the guards are still playing cards in the break room. Apparently, their shift supervisor called in sick with Regalian flu. Of course he did, Admiral Vashi growled, finally cutting through the last wire. The scanner sparked once more and died with a pitiful whimper. Because why would anything go according to plan when you can have comedy instead? They made their way through the corridors, past exhibits, labeled with names like the spoon that started the Centauri Wars, and decorative vase, possibly important. Judge Quintora, his tactical advisor, kept checking her chronometer and shaking her head in disbelief. 17 minutes, she whispered. We've been inside for 17 minutes, and not a single alarm has gone off. This is either the luckiest heist in galactic history, or the most elaborate trap ever constructed. Oh, it gets better, called Moran from up ahead. He was crouched next to what should have been an impenetrable security door, now hanging open like a broken jaw. Someone left the maintenance access unlocked. There's literally a sticky note that says, "Back in 5 minutes, Jerry." Admiral Vashi felt his left eye begin to twitch. In 30 years of criminal enterprise, he had never encountered security this incompetent. It was almost insulting. He had prepared for laser grids, guard patrols, and automated defense systems. He had not prepared for Jerry. They descended into the maximum security level, where the real treasures supposedly lived. Vault Omega 7 loomed before them, its triple force field barriers humming with enough energy to power a small moon. Finally, something that looked appropriately challenging. Commander Tom Marley pulled out his scanner and began analyzing the energy signatures. "This is interesting," he murmured. "These force fields are generating chronoton particles. One wrong move and we could age 50 years in 5 seconds. Or we could just use this," said Quartermaster Earl, holding up a maintenance keycard he had found taped to the wall. Below it, another sticky note read, "For emergency access. Don't tell the boss, Jerry." The force fields deactivated with a cheerful chirp. Inside the vault, suspended in a beam of pure light, hung the blade of eternal conquest. It was beautiful, terrible, and exactly as ancient as the legends claimed. Its edge seemed to cut through reality itself, and power radiated from it in waves that made their teeth ache. Admiral Vashi reached for it with trembling claws, hardly believing their incredible fortune. Just as his fingers closed around the hilt, the vault door opened behind them. "Oh hey," said a human voice, casual as ordering coffee. "I've been looking for that." They all turned to see a maintenance worker in a stained jumpsuit, holding a mop and bucket. His name tag read Brandon Torres. He looked at the legendary weapon in Admiral Vashi's hands like someone who had just found their missing car keys. The alarms finally started blaring. Brandon Torres stood in the doorway, completely unfazed by the shrieking alarms, the flashing red lights, or the fact that he had just walked in on what was clearly the heist of the century. He tilted his head slightly, studying the blade in Admiral Vashi's trembling claws, with the expression of someone trying to remember where they left their reading glasses. "Yeah, that's definitely mine," Brandon said, nodding with satisfaction. "I've been going through the museum databases for weeks trying to find it. Filed like 6 different lost property reports." He held up a crumpled form. Had to describe it as camping knife. Glowy, probably sharp, because your filing system doesn't have a category for ancient weapons of mass destruction. The 5 aliens stood frozen like a tableau of criminal panic. Judge Quintara's mouth hung open so wide that a small bird could have nested in it. Commander Tom Malley's scanner slipped from his nerveless fingers and clattered to the floor. Morton made a small squeaking sound that might have been his brain short-circuiting. Admiral Vashi found his voice first, though it came out as more of a strangled whisper. Your camping knife? Well, technically it's more of a utility blade, Brandon said, scratching his chin thoughtfully. You know how it is, you need something that can cut rope, open cans, slice through interdimensional barriers. The usual camping stuff. This baby's gotten me out of more scrapes than I can count. The alarms grew louder, and somewhere in the distance they could hear boots running toward them. Heavy boots. Lots of them. Excuse me, Quartermaster, I managed to croak. But are you saying you recognize this 50,000-year-old artifact of unimaginable power? 50,000? Brandon looked genuinely surprised. Wow, has it really been that long? Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. He paused, then added helpfully, though to be fair, I did lose track of it during that whole thing with the Zephyrian. You know how it is when you're camping in someone else's galaxy and they get all worked up about trespassing. Admiral Vashi felt reality tilting sideways. The Zephyrians have been extinct for 47,000 years. Yeah, about that, Brandon said, looking slightly embarrassed. That might have been partly my fault. I was just trying to find a quiet spot to set up my tent, but they kept insisting I needed permits and authorization codes. One thing led to another, and he shrugged. Well, you can't make an omelette without breaking a few civilizations, right? The sound of approaching security forces was getting closer. Judge Quintara grabbed Admiral Vashi's arm, her claws digging in deep enough to leave marks. Sir, we need to move, now. Brandon perked up, apparently noticing their distress for the first time. Oh hey, you guys look really stressed about something. Are you in some kind of trouble? His eyes brightened with sudden understanding. Wait, did you break in here to steal my knife? That's actually pretty thoughtful of you, but you could have just asked the front desk. Jerry would have gotten it for you. The security forces sounded like they were just around the corner now. Listen, Brandon continued, completely ignoring the approaching danger. You guys seem like you're having a rough day. How about I help you get out of here? I know all the maintenance tunnels. Brandon led them through a service hatch behind a display case labeled Extinct Species Memorial Wall, which Judge Quintara found deeply unsettling given their recent conversation. The maintenance tunnel was barely wide enough for Admiral Vashi's bulk, and the human moved through it with the confidence of someone taking a Sunday stroll through their own backyard. So, Brandon, Judge Quintara said, trying to keep her voice steady as they crawled through the cramped space, you seem very familiar with this facility. Oh yeah, I've been working here for about 3 months, Brandon replied cheerfully, pausing to examine a junction box. Great benefits package. Plus, Jerry lets me use the good mop bucket. He opened the box and started rewiring something with his bare hands. Just need to reroute the power grid to create a blackout in Section C. Should buy us a few minutes. Commander Tom Maley watched in fascination as Brandon casually manipulated circuits that would have required a master electrician and 3 safety permits. How do you know how to do that? Picked it up during my stint on Kepler Station. Had to rewire half the life support systems during a pirate attack. Turns out most electrical systems work on the same basic principles, whether you're dealing with coffee makers or planetary defense grids. The lights went out behind them, followed by confused shouting from the security forces. There we go, Brandon said with satisfaction. Always works. Judge Quintara felt her sanity slipping away piece by piece. You rewired a planetary defense grid during a pirate attack. Well, I was just trying to get the coffee machine working again, but apparently I accidentally activated some kind of automated cannon system. The pirates didn't stick around to complain. Brandon shrugged as he led them down another tunnel. Honestly, I think they were being a bit dramatic about the whole thing. They emerged into a supply closet filled with cleaning equipment. Through the walls they could hear guards running back and forth in confusion, shouting orders that made no sense because half their communication systems had mysteriously stopped working. Okay, they'll probably figure out the power thing in a few minutes, Brandon said, grabbing a spray bottle filled with something blue and chemical smelling. But I've got a backup plan. Martin eyed the cleaning supplies nervously. What kind of backup plan involves toilet bowl cleaner? Oh, this isn't toilet bowl cleaner. This is industrial degreaser mixed with window cleaner and a splash of that antibacterial stuff. Brandon grinned like he had just solved cold fusion. Makes an excellent smoke screen when it hits the air. Recycling system. Completely harmless, but it smells terrible and makes everyone's eyes water. Admiral Vashi stared at the human in growing horror. You're going to gas the entire security force with cleaning supplies. Gas is such a strong word. I prefer temporarily inconvenience with household chemicals. Brandon was already connecting the spray bottle to an air vent with a length of tubing he had apparently pulled from his pocket. I learned this trick during a bar fight on Titan. Long story. Judge Quintara grabbed his arm. Please tell me you didn't accidentally destroy Titan too. What? No. Titan's fine. Well, mostly fine. There might be a small crater where the bar used to be, but that was totally unrelated to the cleaning supplies thing. The air recycling system kicked in, and moments later they heard coughing and retching from the corridors outside. And that's our cue, Brandon said brightly, opening another service hatch. This way leads to the shipping dock. We'll be out of here in no time. As they crawled through the next tunnel, Judge Quintara muttered under her breath. We're following a human who accidentally commits genocide as a hobby through ventilation shafts while he improvises chemical warfare with janitor supplies. This is my life now. Admiral Vashi's ship, the Crimson Dagger, had seen better days. The cargo hold where they now sat catching their breath smelled of stale recycled air and poor life choices. But it was safe, which was more than any of them had expected an hour ago. Brandon Torres sat cross-legged on a storage crate, still wearing his maintenance jumpsuit, looking completely at ease despite being surrounded by professional criminals aboard a stolen vessel. He had accepted their offer of water but politely declined the military rations, explaining that he had packed a sandwich for his shift. All right, Admiral Vashi said, pacing in front of Brandon like a prosecuting attorney. Enough dancing around the subject. That weapon you claim is your camping knife? It's the blade of eternal conquest. It supposedly destroyed entire star systems during the Zephyrian Wars 50,000 years ago. Brandon nodded thoughtfully as he unwrapped his sandwich. Yeah, that sounds about right. Though to be honest, I mostly used it for opening canned beans and cutting tent rope. It's surprisingly versatile. He took a bite of what appeared to be peanut butter and jelly. I picked it up during my camping trip to Andromeda. Beautiful galaxy, by the way. Highly recommend it if you don't mind the locals being a bit territorial. Judge Quintara felt her eye twitch. When you say locals, oh, the Zephyrians. Nice enough folks, but they had some pretty strict rules about interdimensional camping permits. Brandon shrugged. I just wanted to find a quiet spot to set up my tent, and maybe do some fishing in one of those nebula streams. But apparently I needed 17 different forms filed in triplicate, plus a cultural impact assessment. Commander Tom Marley pulled up holographic records on his datapad, his claws trembling slightly as he scrolled through historical files. The Zephyrian Empire, 47,000 years ago. They controlled 12 galaxies and had military technology that defied known physics. That explains the parking situation, Brandon said, nodding sagely. You should have seen the lines at the spaceport. I waited 3 weeks just to get a temporary visitor's pass, and even then they stuck me in some interdimensional overflow lot about 50 light-years from where I wanted to camp. Martin leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. Brandon, the historical records say the Zephyrian Wars lasted for 3,000 years, and ended with the complete extinction of their entire species. Brandon paused mid-chew, looking genuinely surprised. 3,000 years? Wow, that seems like overkill. The whole thing only took me about a weekend to sort out. Sort out? Admiral Vashi's voice cracked like a teenager asking someone to prom. Well, yeah, I tried going through proper channels first, but their bureaucracy was worse than the DMV. So I figured I'd just talk to whoever was in charge and explain that I only needed the campsite for a few days. Brandon took another bite of his sandwich. Turns out their Supreme War Council took my request for a face-to-face meeting as some kind of formal challenge to single combat. The cargo hold fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the sound of Brandon chewing. Single combat, Judge Quintara repeated slowly, against the Supreme War Council of the Zephyrian Empire. Yeah, it was a bit awkward, honestly. I kept trying to explain that I just wanted to pitch my tent near that nice purple nebula, but they insisted on making it this whole big production. Ceremonial weapons, ancient rituals, orbital live streaming. Very dramatic. Brandon waved his hand dismissively. I guess when I won, their entire governmental structure collapsed because their laws said whoever defeated the council became the new Supreme Emperor or something. Quartermaster, A made a strangled noise. You became the Emperor of the Zephyrian Empire? For about 5 minutes, yeah. Mostly I used the time to abolish their camping permit requirements and declare a general amnesty for anyone who'd been arrested for interdimensional trespassing. Brandon looked thoughtful. I probably should have stuck around to help with the transition, but honestly galactic politics gives me a headache. Plus I had reservations at a really nice campground in the Milky Way. Commander Tom Marley's datapad slipped from his numb fingers. So you just left? Well, I gave them some suggestions about maybe trying democracy, left my contact information in case they had questions, and headed home. I figured they'd sort themselves out. Brandon's expression grew slightly concerned. Wait, you're saying they didn't make it? That's a shame. They had excellent coffee. Commander Tom Marley scrambled to retrieve his datapad, his hands shaking as he pulled up more historical records. The screen flickered to life, displaying ancient texts and archaeological findings that had puzzled xenohistorians for millennia. According to these records, he said, his voice barely steady, the blade of eternal conquest was forged in the heart of a dying star. It can cut through the fabric of space-time itself. Military analysts estimate it has enough destructive potential to level entire solar systems. Brandon glanced at the weapon, which was now propped casually against a supply crate like an umbrella. Huh? That explains why it stayed so sharp. I always wondered about that. He took another bite of his sandwich. Though honestly, I mostly used it for practical stuff. You know, opening cans of soup, cutting fishing line, trimming back interdimensional hedges when they grew over my campsite. Judge Quintara felt something snap in her brain. Interdimensional hedges. Oh yeah, they're a real pain if you don't keep them maintained. Left unchecked, they can grow right through reality barriers and mess up local space-time. I learned it the hard way during my camping trip to the Horsehead Nebula. Brandon looked thoughtful. Come to think of it, that might explain what happened to the Valdorian Collective. Morton's voice came out as a squeak. What happened to the Valdorian Collective? Well, I was trying to set up camp near this really nice red giant star, right? Perfect spot for roasting marshmallows. But these interdimensional hedges had completely overgrown the area, so I trimmed them back a bit. Brandon gestured vaguely with his sandwich. Apparently those hedges were the only thing keeping their pocket dimensions stable. When I pruned them, their entire civilization sort of folded in on itself. Commander Tom Marley was frantically scrolling through records, his face growing paler by the second. The Valdorian Collective disappeared overnight 37,000 years ago. No trace ever found. Scientists theorized it was some kind of dimensional collapse. Yeah, that sounds right. I felt really bad about it. So I left a note of apology tucked under what was left of their reality anchor. Hope they got it before everything went sideways. Brandon paused. Literally sideways, in their case. Pocket dimensions are weird when they collapse. Admiral Vashi slumped against the wall, staring at Brandon like he was watching a natural disaster in slow motion. How many civilizations have you accidentally destroyed? Brandon considered this seriously, counting on his fingers. Well, there were the Zephyrians, obviously. The Valdorian, the machine intelligence that ran the Sigma Draconis system, didn't take it well when I asked them to turn down their quantum processors because they were interfering with my radio reception. You argued with a machine god about noise complaints. Judge Quintera's voice had risen to a pitch that only small mammals should be able to hear. It wasn't really an argument, more of a polite request. I just wanted to listen to some Earth music while I stargazed, but their quantum calculations kept creating interference patterns. Brandon shrugged. So I unplugged a few things. Turns out those few things were the primary processing cores for their entire galactic network. Quartermaster A was making small whimpering sounds. The Sigma Draconis incident. The Historians Guild still debates what could have caused an entire machine civilization to simply stop functioning simultaneously across 17 star systems. Oh, they didn't all stop at once. It took about 15 minutes for the shutdown cascade to reach the outer systems. I watched the whole thing happen while I was making s'mores. Pretty lights actually, though I felt terrible about the timing. I'd brought extra marshmallows and everything, but by then there wasn't anyone left to share them with. Commander Tom Marley had given up trying to maintain professional composure and was simply staring at his datapad in existential horror. The crystalline hegemony. 42,000 years ago, advanced silicon-based lifeforms that built megastructures around entire stars. Oh yeah, those guys, super polite. They actually helped me set up my tent and everything. Brandon's face brightened at the memory, though I probably should have mentioned that I was planning to do some fishing in their energy collection grid. I thought it was just a decorative light installation. You went fishing in a Dyson sphere, Admiral Vashi said flatly. Great fishing, too. Caught this amazing plasma eel that was about 3 miles long. Beautiful creature. Brandon looked wistful. Unfortunately, when I reeled it in, it sort of pulled their whole energy collection system out of alignment. The cascade failure took out about half their stellar engineering projects, before I could apologize properly. Define apologize properly, Judge Quintera whispered. Well, I tried to fix it, obviously. But my repair attempts seemed to make things worse. Something about incompatible energy signatures and recursive feedback loops. The nice crystal folks assured me it wasn't my fault right before their entire civilization transcended to a higher dimension to escape the ongoing catastrophe. The cargo hold fell silent except for the sound of 5 alien hearts breaking simultaneously. The good news, Brandon added helpfully, is that they seemed pretty excited about the transcendence thing. Silver lining, right? The proximity alarms on the Crimson Dagger began shrieking with the enthusiasm of a fire drill at a fireworks factory. Admiral Vashi rushed to the bridge, leaving Brandon sitting peacefully in the cargo hold, still working on his sandwich while surrounded by the traumatized remnants of his crew. Sir, Morton called from the communications station, his voice cracking like a teenager. We've got incoming. It's General Krafnog's battle fleet. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 destroyers and enough firepower to crack a moon in half. Admiral Vashi's blood turned to ice water. General Krafnog was the kind of military leader who considered negotiation to be what you did with the survivors after you'd already blown up their planet. His reputation for excessive force was legendary even among criminals. The main screen flickered to life, revealing General Krafnog's scarred face and the kind of expression usually reserved for people who'd just stepped on something unpleasant. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity as weapon systems powered up. Admiral Vashi, the general growled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer, you will return the stolen artifact immediately and surrender your vessel for destruction. You have 60 seconds to comply. Sir? Brandon's voice drifted up from the cargo hold. Is someone upset about something up there? Because I can hear shouting, and shouting usually means someone needs help sorting things out. Before Admiral Vashi could stop him, Brandon had climbed up to the bridge, still carrying his sandwich. He took one look at the screen and brightened considerably. Oh hey, you must be the museum security response team. I'm Brandon Torres, maintenance staff. Thanks for coming so quickly. He waved cheerfully at General Krafnog. Sorry about all the confusion with the sword thing. It's actually mine, but I totally understand the mix-up. Bureaucracy, am I right? General Krafnog's face went through several interesting color changes before settling on a shade of purple that suggested either rage or impending cardiac arrest. You You are claiming ownership of the Blade of Eternal Conquest. Well yeah, I've got the receipt somewhere if you need to see it. Though technically I didn't buy it so much as find it lying around after the previous owner had that unfortunate transcendence incident. Brandon took another bite of his sandwich. I tried returning it to their next of kin, but interdimensional bureaucracy is even worse than the regular kind. The General's tactical officers were frantically whispering updates about Brandon's identity, cross-referencing his face with historical databases. One of them made a noise like a dying space whale. "Sir," the officer whispered, "the facial recognition software is flagging him as a potential match for archaeological records. Multiple extinction events. The probability algorithms are suggesting we should retreat immediately." "Retreat?" General Krafnig roared. "From one human? I have enough firepower here to sterilize a continent." Brandon looked genuinely concerned. "Oh gosh, I hope you're not planning to use all that firepower around here. I've got some other camping gear scattered around this sector that doesn't react well to high-energy weapons." He scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Let's see, there's my portable fusion stove parked near the Betelgeuse system. Great for cooking, but it gets a bit unstable if you shoot at it." The color drained from General Krafnog's face. "Oh, and my emergency shelter is set up in the Vega Nebula. It's got some kind of self-defense system that I never quite figured out how to turn off. Last time someone fired missiles near it, the whole thing sort of expanded, turned a nice little nebula into a black hole if I remember correctly." One of the General's officers fainted. "Plus there's my spare fishing rod anchored to that neutron star in the crab system. The line is made from some kind of exotic matter I picked up during a camping trip to the Andromeda border. Pretty sure if you cut it, it would unravel local spacetime for about 50 light-years in every direction." General Krafnog was now the color of week-old milk. Your fishing rod could destroy 50 light-years of space." "Well, that's just a rough estimate. Could be more. Physics gets weird when you're dealing with neutron star fishing." Brandon looked apologetic. "I really should put up better warning signs, but who expects people to go around shooting at camping equipment?" The General's fleet began executing the fastest retreat in military history. As the last of General Krafnog's ships disappeared into hyperspace with the urgency of beings fleeing an approaching supernova, Brandon finished his sandwich and dusted the crumbs off his maintenance jumpsuit. He picked up the Blade of Eternal Conquest from where it leaned against the supply crate and examined it with the satisfaction of someone who had just found their favorite screwdriver. "Well, that worked out nicely," he said, sliding the cosmic weapon through a loop on his tool belt, like it was a perfectly ordinary utility knife. "Thanks for helping me track this down, everyone. I really appreciate it. I was starting to think I'd never see it again." Admiral Veshy stared at Brandon with the expression of someone watching their entire worldview collapse in real time. You're just going to carry it around like that?" "Well, yeah. Where else would I put it?" Brandon looked genuinely puzzled. "It's a tool. Tools belong on tool belts. My supervisor, Jerry, is always telling us to keep our equipment organized and readily accessible." Judge Quintara made a noise that might have been laughter or might have been the sound of her sanity finally giving up and moving out. "Brandon, do you have any idea what you are?" "A maintenance worker," Brandon replied, checking his watch. "Though I guess technically I'm off shift now. I should probably head home and get some sleep. Got a big day tomorrow." "Big day?" Commander Tom Marley asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Yeah. I'm thinking about taking some vacation time. Jerry says I've got about 6 months of unused leave built up." Brandon's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "I've been reading about this really nice, quiet galaxy next door. Supposed to have excellent camping weather and minimal bureaucracy." The blood drained from every alien face in the cargo hold. "You know," Brandon continued thoughtfully, "since you guys seem to be in the treasure hunting business, maybe I could help you out sometime. I've left a fair amount of stuff scattered around over the years. My camping chair is probably still sitting on that moon in the Rigel system, and I think I left my portable shower unit orbiting somewhere near Proxima Centauri." Quartermaster A's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "What do those things do?" "Oh, normal camping stuff. The chair's great for stargazing, though it does have that auto-defense feature that activates if anyone tries to move it without permission. And the shower unit is really convenient, but the water recycling system tends to create these little temporal loops if you don't maintain it properly. Morton was frantically taking notes, apparently compiling a list of locations that civilized species should avoid at all costs. Plus, there's my cooler in the Orion Nebula, my backup tent in the Magellanic Clouds, and I'm pretty sure I left my solar charger plugged into a pulsar somewhere in the Sagittarius arm. Brandon scratched his head. Come to think of it, that might explain those weird radio signals everyone's been picking up from that direction. Admiral Vashi realized with crystalline clarity that they had not rescued a maintenance worker from a museum heist. They had accidentally liberated the single most dangerous entity in the known universe, and he was treating them like helpful neighbors who had given him a ride to the hardware store. Brandon, he said carefully, perhaps it would be best if you took your time planning this vacation. Oh, don't worry about me, I'm a very responsible camper. I always clean up after myself. Brandon paused. Well, mostly. Sometimes there are unavoidable complications, but that's just part of the camping experience, right? He walked over to a viewport and gazed out at the stars with the contentment of someone planning a pleasant weekend getaway, rather than the potential extinction of entire galactic civilizations. I should probably get going, Brandon said, pulling out what appeared to be a standard personal communicator, but was probably some kind of reality-bending transportation device. Need to pick up supplies for the trip. Thinking I'll swing by Earth first, grab some of those new freeze-dried camping meals. Technology these days, right? He pressed a button on the device, and space in front of him began to fold in ways that hurt to look at directly. Thanks again for all your help, Brandon called out, as he stepped toward what was clearly a manually operated wormhole. You guys are the best. If you're ever in the neighborhood, look me up. He disappeared into the swirling vortex of bent space-time, humming what sounded like an old Earth camping song. The wormhole snapped shut with a sound like reality saying, "Excuse me," and going back to normal. The 5 criminals stood in stunned silence, processing the fact that they had just helped the galaxy's most accidentally destructive force plan his next vacation. Well, Judge Quintara said finally, at least we know where not to go camping. 6 hours after Brandon Torres disappeared into his casually summoned wormhole, Admiral Vashi called an emergency crew meeting in the cargo hold of the Crimson Dagger. The 5 criminals sat in a circle like survivors of a cosmic disaster, which in retrospect they absolutely were. Right, Admiral Vashi said, his voice hoarse from what he privately thought of as the screaming hour. We need to establish some ground rules about what happened today. Nothing happened today, Morton said immediately, his eyes still slightly glazed. We never went to the museum. We never met any humans. We definitely never helped the galaxy's most dangerous being plan a vacation to another galaxy. Exactly. Judge Quintara agreed, pulling out her official incident report datapad. I'm filing this under equipment malfunction, resulting in temporary vessel displacement. No mention of ancient weapons, interdimensional camping gear, or casual genocide. Commander Tom Marley had spent the last hour wiping all references to Brandon Torres from his historical database searches. As far as anyone knows, we experienced a minor navigation error and spent the day recalibrating our star charts. What about the museum, Quartermaster? A asked nervously. The museum had a gas leak, Admiral Vashi said firmly, completely unrelated to our activities. Very sad. Everyone had to evacuate temporarily due to cleaning supply fumes. They all nodded solemnly, understanding that their continued sanity depended on maintaining this fiction. Judge Quintara finished typing her report with the dedication of someone filing paperwork to save the universe. There, official record shows nothing more exciting than a routine equipment check and some minor administrative delays. Good, Admiral Vashi said. Now I want everyone to promise me something. We never speak of this again. Not to each other, not to our families, not to our therapists. What we witnessed today stays buried deeper than a black hole's event horizon. Agreed, they chorused, though Morton added quietly, I'm still going to have nightmares about interdimensional hedge trimming. 6 months later, Admiral Vashi was enjoying a quiet morning of legitimate salvage work, when Mortin burst onto the bridge, waving his communications array like a man possessed. "Sir, you need to see this. The Galactic news feeds are going crazy." The main screen filled with breaking news alerts from every major network across known space. The headlines scrolled past in increasingly frantic fonts: Andromeda Galaxy Communications, mysteriously silent. Scientific community baffled by complete radio blackout. Emergency council session called as neighboring galaxy disappears from long-range sensors. Admiral Vashi felt his blood turn to liquid nitrogen. "How long ago did this start?" "About a week ago, sir. Complete communications blackout. No energy signatures, no quantum entanglement pings, nothing. It's like the entire galaxy just stopped." Judge Quintara appeared at Admiral Vashi's shoulder, her face pale as starlight. "You don't Before anyone could finish that terrifying thought, Quartermaster Urs called out from the communication station, "Sir, incoming message, personal courier delivery for Admiral Vashi." A small probe materialized next to their ship, releasing a single item before vanishing back into hyperspace. The item drifted toward their cargo bay, a colorful postcard featuring a cheerful cartoon camping scene. Admiral Vashi opened it with trembling claws. The message, written in neat handwriting: "Having a wonderful time. Found the perfect campsite near a beautiful spiral nebula. Locals are much more relaxed about permits here. The fishing is amazing. Hope you're all well. Thanks again for your help. Brandon." P.S. If anyone asks about the radio silence, I had to do some emergency repairs on my portable generator. Should be back to normal in a few thousand years. The postcard slipped from Admiral Vashi's nerveless fingers and drifted to the floor. Nobody said a word. They all agreed without discussion to burn the postcard and